This is Saving America with your host, Dr. David D. Schein, author, professor, attorney, and all-around useful person, presenting the intersection of business and politics. Enjoy common sense commentary and interviews with some of the world's most interesting people. Now here's your host, Dr. David D. Schein.
Thanks, John, for getting our show launched today. We're kicking off this edition of Saving America with my week in review commentary. There might be a little progress in the Iran settlement, and gas prices dip a little. What else is going on? The U.S. economy still looks shaky. Trump flexes his muscle in the primaries, and a panic in California. Let's take a closer look at these and other hot stories for week 23 of 2026, followed by my interesting guests this week. First, Jim Oberweis, who will talk about both business and campaigning, followed by Dr. Ronica Jacobs, who's the host of Life Jacked, the Resilience podcast. The U.S. economy looks shaky. People think of the GOP as the party of business. Trump certainly has promoted his pro-growth agenda, but it takes more than speeches to get the economy going. After the Biden-Harris debacle, almost anything looks good for this economy. However, the combination of the anti-American Dem Party shutting down the government for record lengths of time, not once but twice in the last 18 months, and the skyrocketing fuel costs due to the Iran conflict have the economy struggling and the people struggling with it. What my research shows is that the GDP, that's the gross domestic product, that's how much everything together counts, only grew at 1.6% annual rate in the first quarter, which is off from the projected pace of 2%. You know, some might say this is just a rounding error. Well, a lot depends on the number against you're applying that percent. The American economy is huge, so a 0.4% miss sounds little, but it's a whole lot of money, and that also translates into lost jobs and other economic opportunities not being realized. Makes a difference. I wrote my first book, Decline of America, because of my concern about the national debt. Despite the Trump administration in D.C., the debt continues to skyrocket. It's now over $10 trillion more than when I released my book in 2018, right, less than 8 years later. This is unsustainable. Neither party in D.C. is willing to admit that this is a major problem. As I've said before, the U.S. can only support this debt due to the reputation of the U.S. as an economic juggernaut. If we were any other country, we'd be a laughingstock due to this debilitating debt. Interest alone on the national debt is estimated to be 19% of the entire federal revenue. Imagine paying 20% of your paycheck just on the interest before paying for anything else. Wait, you and I are paying a ton of money before we see our paychecks. This is why our taxes keep increasing, because the states and localities are also spending money like drunks on a bender. Let's take an approach to how do we fix this situation. First of all, we need to get both parties on board. That could be a challenge, but maybe we can fix that too. The Dr. Dave plan to save America. An immediate 1/3 cut in total federal employment, including the military. This can be done. Due to the incredible waste in government, including the military, this is just a matter of fiscal discipline. 2, elimination of all federal pensions. Federal employees can have a savings plan just like our struggling private sector employees who are paying those bloated salaries and benefits. Cut federal salaries and other benefits to match the average of the private sector employees. Why should federal employees get a ton of vacation and holidays when the average private sector employee does not? Cut all congressional salaries to $66,000 a year, not indexed for inflation. This is an average income in America. Eliminate all federal programs that go to the states for administration. That's number 5. This includes SNAP, Medicaid, etc. The massive fraud that is being reported daily is federal money going to the states, and they are not minding the store. It is free money to them. But it's not free money. It's our tax dollars, and ridiculous amounts of borrowing are supporting this waste. Think about it. You send $1,000 to D.C. The overpaid and under-supervised clowns take $600 or $700 of it, and then $300 or $400 back to these state programs. The states then waste most of it due to a total failure of accountability. There are no poor states in America. If the states don't want to give away money, then that is their decision being made much closer to the consumers. Part of this is also mass transit. A great example is Houston, an auto-dependent city. Some fools in the 1990s used tons of federal money to build a streetcar line. Yes, an 1890s streetcar line. It has been a failure from the start. Predictably, they took more federal money and made the underutilized streetcar line bigger. I guarantee you, if the city had to fund it exclusively, this boondoggle would never have been built to mess up the busy city streets. Modernize the American military. Speaking as someone who grew up in a military family, I have observed a lot firsthand. Look at what tiny Ukraine has done to Russia. Time for us to really examine what we need to get the job done. We need to control space, control under the seas, and have a nuclear force second to none. That's all modern technology. While I debate this with my colleagues, I think trying to have more ships in China is a total waste of money. Ships today are just target practice for missiles and drones. End of story. Save Social Security. This is not a damn benefit from the federal government. I have paid into Social Security since I had my first regular gig at age 17, the summer before I started college. This is a Ponzi scheme, and it needs to be reformed now. It should be financed properly, and the taxpayers should have some input. If we stop flushing trillions down the drain, it should be no problem to give the money back to the hardworking Americans who have paid into it. I have paid into it for nearly 6 decades, folks. I want my money back. Really reform the Postal Service. Bulk rate is a ripoff. It costs more to get those magazines and huge postcards into our stuffed mailboxes than the typical first-class mail. We taxpayers are subsidizing the trash stuffing our mailboxes. Raise bulk mail costs immediately, then cut deliveries to 2 weekdays in business zip codes and 1 weekday and a Saturday for residential. And if UPS and FedEx can do it cheaper, stop competing with them. Number 9, vote for candidates who stop raising taxes. The money is yours, not the government's, not the politicians. We need police, we need fire departments, we need roads, but we already pay gas taxes for roads. Insurance companies already subsidize fire and police. Enough is enough. Your vote matters, your voice matters, and the future of the country depends on people who are willing to stand up and say, stop wasting our money. Trump flexes his muscles in the primaries. Trump endorsements lead to the defeats of Rhino Republican Senators Cassidy in Louisiana and Massey in Kentucky. It was no surprise then that yet another Rhino GOP senator took a hit in the primary in Texas. And some of my editors suggested I need to define Rhino. Rhino is generally a GOP or Republican senator or congressman who has been in office for a while, and the acronym stands for Republican in name only. What that means is this is someone who claims to be a Republican, but in the current definition of what a Republican is, they are not following the party line. And so, generally speaking, there's been a criticism of them. I'm a little bit more moderate than that, but I do think it's important that whoever is in office needs to support the president of their party. The Democrats have certainly done a fabulous job of supporting some of the worst presidents in history. The Republicans, not so much, and they need to get behind their leader. So it's been pretty interesting to see what's been happening lately in the political scene. Here in Texas, we had two questionable candidates for the Senate. I'm no fan of either. I wanted the incumbent Cornyn out due to his being there for over 20 years and getting relatively little done. That's way too long to be in office. But I did not want a whack job like Paxton. Besides being a fool in general, his wife apparently caught him fooling around, and it looks like he's benefiting from state business on the side. Trump stepped in late in the game to endorse Paxton. My advice to Trump would have been to leave that primary alone. In another important primary, this one for Texas Attorney General, activist GOP Congressman Chip Roy, notably not a favorite of Trump, lost his primary to run for Attorney General to replace Paxton. In total, Trump claimed he racked up 118 endorsement wins with no losses in the current primary season. I can't vouch for that number, but I can tell you that Trump did very, very well in the primary. It's clear that his endorsements seem to be a big plus. The notable endorsements are the 3 Senate races that I just mentioned. Those of you who may not be as familiar with politics as I am may not realize the power of incumbency. To take out a single senior incumbent in a primary is remarkable. To do it for 3 different senior GOP senators is an amazing turnabout. And it may mark a change in our political structure in America, so we'll have to see how it goes as we head forward. Now, winning the primary does not mean that the GOP candidate will win the general election. In fact, if you waste your time listening to the slopstream press, you'll hear that Paxton is going to lose to Dem candidate for Senate in Texas, Tallarico. Not so fast. Consistent with the extreme left-leaning and increasingly isolated Dem operation, clowns like this might win in New York City, but don't bet against Texans. Tallarico reportedly claims there are 6 genders, was seen eating ribs by holding them with a napkin, claimed Jesus would support abortion, and that God is non-binary. He's a laughingstock here in Texas already. I wonder how much more of a fool he will make himself leading up to the election. People are calling him Beto 2.0. Just remember, failed politician Beto O'Rourke was supposed to win as well here in Texas in a couple different elections. Beto is Irish, but changed his name to Beto to try to trick the Mexican demographic for more votes. Didn't work, folks. Earlier this year, I predicted that the GOP would defy history and stay solid in the mid-year elections this November. With Dem governors in New Jersey and Virginia, and the flagship failure, Mamdani in New York City, the Dems have nothing to run on. However, simple answers will be critical to seal a full GOP victory. Resolve the gas price issue that impacts every American. Trump knows this and is clearly pushing to close an Iran deal right now. For my money, I would rather that he finish the military destruction in Iran. This is his call. However, with any part of the current radical regime still in charge, I do not believe there will be a long period of quiet before the USA is back over there bombing them. Just as I said for Russia and China, as well as Iran, I do support the populations of these countries. Hopefully, the repressive governments can be outmaneuvered and outlasted to create a real world peace for future generations. Panic in California. Just my luck. I do my best to stay out of California, but just happened to be there in time to see an overheated chemical storage tank cause chaos in Garden Grove, California. That's about 35 miles south of Los Angeles. The evacuation area was about 25 miles north of where I was, but it was an apt reminder of how the actions of others can cause problems for people who just happen to be nearby. 50,000 people were evacuated. After a few days, the tank, which had a lot of attention, cracked, reducing the risk of an explosion, and people were allowed to return to their homes and businesses. 40 years ago, I was familiar with a somewhat similar case in Greater New Orleans. A tank in a refinery along a highway across from a low-income residential area caught fire. People were unable to live in their homes for a few days. I proposed to the general counsel of that oil company that we get a couple adjusters and go door to door in the neighborhood. Give money to each resident to help them immediately. It would have been $200 or $300. Not asking for releases or anything. I was turned down. Guess what? Within a week, $1 billion lawsuit was filed against the company. I moved on with my career, so I do not know what was the amount of the eventual settlement. I'm pro-business, but when a business causes a problem, it is better morally to get ahead of it rather than waiting for lawsuits. The tank's owner is GKN Aerospace, a company I've never heard of. The tank contained a highly flammable intermediate chemical involved in the manufacturing of plastics. I hope they have enough insurance to survive this situation. A small business here in Houston, Texas area had a significant environmental issue following an explosion in a residential neighborhood. That business is now gone. They had enough claims against them from the authorities as well as the neighbors. They just could not afford the fallout from the explosion. Companies should help those harmed, whether businesses or residents, but that depends on the finances and the insurance. In the Garden Grove case, lawsuits and local investigations have already started. Fortunately, nobody was injured in the situation. Many had their holiday ruined, and many businesses lost the opportunity for sales that were anticipated for Memorial Day weekend. I am hopeful that there will be a fund to allow those innocent businesses to recover their losses. Also, we need to approach healing the environment and put in new safety parameters. It is unclear why this tank was where it was, how it was designed, and things like that. This is important, and every business should be operating with as much risk control as possible. That obviously was not done here. An unexpected blow to the Trump administration. Educated women in the Trump administration took a big hit, with Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi both being fired by the administration. To add insult to injury, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, just left her position to tend to her sick husband. Under the table, I'm hearing rumors that her departure, while not a public firing, may have been triggered by pushback from those who reported to her. Others claim that she could just not beat back the deep state. In any event, I'd like to see her back helping Americans. The first two women were replaced by men. Gabbard as well, at least temporarily, will be replaced by a man. In a bit of recovery, Trump appointed Pam Bondi to a position to help government interface with industry on developments in AI. I do not believe this much lower profile position will help Trump with his critics that he is anti-female. Again, I'm against DEI, but also sensitive to the modern era where there are many qualified women to compete with the men. In the case of Kristi Noem, unfortunately, she screwed up more than once. In the case of Pam Bondi, however, in my opinion, as an attorney, she did a good job and should not have been fired from the AG position. Antitrust is failing America. The Department of Justice has taken a position approving the $110 billion takeover of Warner Brothers by competitor Paramount. This is followed by a major battle for the company with Netflix. The bidding process went on for months. Lots of big-name celebrities have come forward to oppose the merger since they see it as killing jobs in the entertainment industry. I oppose any merger takeover valued at $10 billion or above, absent special circumstances like the possible takeover of Spirit by JetBlue that was proposed several years ago. Remember that the morons in the Biden-Harris administration turned that one down, and now Spirit is gone. Mergers cost innovation and thousands of jobs. When Exxon and Mobil merged in 1997, 14,000 jobs were lost in one day. Seen much innovation at the gas pump lately? I don't think so. This is a second unpleasant surprise by the Trump administration. As I mentioned previously, I strongly oppose Nexstar's $6.2 billion acquisition of Tegna. Trump's head of the FCC approved this merger despite the law prohibiting this specific type of merger. The proposed merger, now on hold due to a judge's injunction, would put TV affiliates of the combined companies in a huge number of TV markets. This is just too much control for one company. The obvious concern is that with just about every American household having a TV, with one voice controlling that many stations, it would give them a chance to modify news stories to the liking of whoever owns the stations. Think about CNN on steroids. And in our special interest report this week, pet goats save family after tornado. Hey folks, I just can't make this stuff up. In my limited contact with goats, I didn't find them to be too smart. But one family has beaten the odds with some help from their goats. So this Oklahoma family dives into their storm shelter when a major tornado hits. The problem was the debris buried the storm shelter entrance. When the rescuers arrived, they could not determine where the family was buried. According to reports, the two pet goats, who apparently somehow survived the tornado, went to where the family was buried and stayed there, making a racket, until the rescuers approached the now hidden shelter door. So, a cool story for sure, and a story for all those pet owners out there to take good care of your pets, because one day they might just end up saving you. And that's my Week in Review report for week 23 of 2026. So, let's all go out and consciously get along with our neighbors. Let's reduce the violence and discord in our wonderful country.